episode of the Boulevard. We got our boy Big T back with us tonight. Thankfully, we missed you, buddy. We're glad you're back, even though you still don't have a camera. Uh, we'll let the pretty people see your face one day. Um, anyways, we just got the new college football bracket. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to talk a little Heisman, a little NIL, little Pilgrim Parlay, and break down some of these big games this week. Um, First things first, I say we just jump right into this bracket that just got released, guys. Um, Looking at this bracket, it looks like Tennessee gets back in. SMU is now in, so you got two ACC teams in. Arizona State is representing the Big 12 currently, and Indiana didn't fall a whole lot. They're still in as well. And when I look at this, you see Oregon still at one, Texas at two, Boise stays at four, but it looks like the Big 12 is kind of creeping up on them in the rankings. So Boise might drop back down to that 12 spot. Miami's at three. We got Ohio State hanging out at five still. Penn State at six, a very fraudulent team. Notre Dame at seven. Georgia at eight. Tennessee at nine. 10 SMU, 11 Indiana, 12 Arizona State here. And all these teams that are sitting in here with not having to play in the conference title game are smiling. They know what they got to do this week, right? Go out, win, and you're probably still in. So I guess we're going to kind of start into just an open discussion here. Anything stand out? You guys can kind of talk about, Ole Miss losing, A&M losing, Alabama losing, what that does for the landscape. Is there a possibility of seeing a three-loss team? Jose, I'm going to throw it over to you and kind of let you dig into this first.
Yeah, well, two things I want to touch on really quick. You talked about the Big 12 creeping up on Boise State. In my opinion, there's only one team that can catch them, and that's Arizona State. Arizona State wins against Arizona, and they win the Big 12 championship game. They may have enough to overtake them, but in my opinion, that's the only team left that really stands a chance to take over Boise State's position. Everybody else in the Big 12 at this point is just playing to get in. Arizona State's playing to get that first round bye. Also, just want to point out Tulane at 17. That's your team right there. If Boise doesn't make it, if Boise loses to UNLV, if Boise falls somewhere else, if things don't go Boise's way, Tulane will be a representative. I know people are going to say Army or Navy or one of those teams, but Tulane will play Army, I believe it is, in their conference championship game. So assuming they win that game, Tulane will be a representative. So from that perspective, it's Boise State or it's Tulane, and that's about it as far as G5. I don't really see any other team that's gonna be able to make a late push like that. So those are two kind of key things that stuck out to me. I guess from the lower end of the spectrum in regards to the bracket.
Brian?
Yeah, another thing I noticed in the bracket, I've kind of been calling for it for the past few weeks, is Notre Dame to surpass Penn State on that ladder, and it still hasn't happened. You mentioned fraudulent team as you counted them in the bracket, and I still just don't see that quality win from them. So I don't understand why the committee still has them this high. And you bring up the SEC having all those teams lose last week. It finally did get that team, SMU, into that bracket. They're finally starting to get that respect. And I think that's really important for them. Gives them a little bit more wiggle room going into this conference title game. I think they still may have a way in with a close loss to Miami, the way the SEC has cannibalized itself.
Tyler, what do you think about this bracket, buddy? Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to mention here. That Tennessee, Notre Dame, um, Penn State, and Indiana, they're all kind of sitting there like, let's just go out there, win, rest, and wait for our round one game.
If I can ask real quick, guys, gun to your head, like we'll just go around by person. Does a 3-loss team get an at-large bid when it's all said and done?
I say no.
I say no myself. Yeah.
Okay, I'm
So-
just curious.
Yes, and I want to kind of dig into that right now here. So when you guys look at this here, Georgia still has to play in a conference title game. A&M controls their fate here. They can get in
Mhm.
as a 3-loss team. They can beat Texas and they can go and beat Georgia in the title game, and you will have a 3-loss team in with a bye, essentially, right? They would jump
Well,
Boise.
And that's why I specified at large because A&M wins out, they're going to get the
Yeah,
automatic
yeah.
qualifier.
Yeah, the body of
So-
work is there. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So A&M still controls their fate here. But I do want to I want to talk about Georgia here for a minute, and I want to talk about SMU. If SMU loses to Miami, does Clemson get in? And number two, if Georgia has 3 losses, they lose to Texas in the SEC title game, are they going to be out? Those are my 2 questions that I want you guys to kind of answer right here in this moment.
Go ahead, Brian.
If SMU loses, does Clemson get in?
Does
And
does the ACC get 2 teams in, and would it be Clemson, or will SMU keep that spot? Do they have a better body of work than Clemson?
I think they do. Like, because if you look at SMU against their ranked opponents this year, like sure, like they've looked dominant in some games, but when you look at them against Louisville and then you look at them against Georgia, their offense just didn't show up. And to me, that if I'm a committee member, I am still very, very trepidatious of putting them in. Now, SMU, their only loss comes to now a 2-loss BYU, but that comes by 3. And the rest of their contests, we've talked about it before. Elite teams handle business, and they've, for the most part in this latter half of the season, they've handled their business. They've looked like an explosive team. Now, if you're to go into the conference title game and you lose to Miami by say 3, I think you're still looking at a better body of work than Clemson. I think that 3-point loss still looks way better than, a 31-point loss to Georgia and a double-digit loss to Clemson a few weeks back. So I would think if they're going to get the 2 teams, it would still be Miami and Clemson, or Miami and SMU at that point. I mean, what do y'all think?
Yeah. Clemson has enough.
Right.
So the scenario,
Well,
the scenario I'm kind of present here is, if say Clemson takes care of business this weekend against South Carolina, a very tough game.
Mhm.
SMU loses or Georgia loses in their conference championship game. Does that spot go to Clemson? Is that Clemson's spot?
No.
No.
I don't even think it's close, to be honest with you. Like, the committee has shown us in years past that eye test matters. Like, you have to look good. You know what I mean? SMU is beating the shit at every team they play against recently. Ever since they made the decision to keep Kevin Jennings at quarterback, they've looked fantastic, right? Let's just take a look at last week. Clemson barely escaped Pitt, right? That was a close game, a game that Clemson could have very well lost.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget, a few weeks ago, SMU played a Pitt team that was either undefeated or only had 1 loss, and SMU beat the living shit out of that team. They had no reason. There was no reason to be on that same field as SMU. You know what I mean? So I'm looking at common opponents within the ACC. SMU is far and away the better team. If Clemson gets in, it's on name brand only, and they want to put Dabo in as a swan song, I guess, towards the end of his career to get into the inaugural CFP. But in terms of just body of work, who looks better and just deserving to get in, it should be SMU, in my opinion, and it's really not even close.
Yeah.
Well,
I feel like
I'm going to be honest. Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I feel like they're setting this up here for a SMU loss to Miami to let in a 3-loss Alabama or Ole Miss to get in. You know what I mean? And I feel like they're setting that up for one of these 3-loss teams to get in. Go ahead, Jose.
I mean, I agree with what you're saying. Like, yes, like this is the way they're setting it up. They want to get Bama. They want to get an SEC team in there. They want to get as many as they can. I agree with that. I just personally think SMU loses to Miami. I think they're going to beat Miami.
I think they win it too.
That's a game that I've had circled on my calendar for about a month now, right? Like, these past few weeks we've been betting Kansas. Every week we've been betting Kansas, and they've been cashing for us, right? Now I started to think, okay, what's another team that's the public is not high on, but it's actually good? And I'm kind of keyed in on SMU. Like, no one's talking about SMU from the national standpoint, but this team is actually really good, guys. I can't imagine in that conference championship game. I mean, what's that spread going to open at? A pick? Like SMU -1? I feel like that's going to be a game where everyone's going to be on Miami. They're going to want to back Cam Ward. Miami gets all the spotlights, in terms of the national media. I think SMU wins that game pretty easily, to be honest with you. So I'm not saying this is much ado about nothing, because I do agree with you. If SMU were to lose that game, they're setting up for Bama or Ole Miss or someone to get in. I just don't think SMU loses. In fact, I think we should be having this conversation with Miami. Like, if Miami loses, are they out? You know what I mean?
If Miami loses, are they out or in?
Because who has Miami really beat? Like Florida, is that their best win?
Do you put in Miami or Alabama or Ole Miss? Who do you put in? Do they?
Now, my struggle with that argument is, let's say SMU goes out there and they play the same dominant brand of football they have been, and Miami plays the same lackadaisical brand of defense they have on multiple occasions this year. Miami on multiple times, I believe 5 times in their last 7 games, they've allowed more than 28 points. Yeah. SMU has shown the capability to put up, 40, 45, and pretty quickly at that. Like, if Miami gets blown out and they get absolutely boat raced out of this conference title game, are they still in, even with that 2 losses? Like, say they lose by 28.
I don't think they are.
Like, I think they're out.
Yeah, I think they're out. I if they get in, it's because every other team that's on the bubble has again lost, or it's been a chaos-filled day.
Like, they've been playing with fire, so I agree.
So
yeah. Look, hey, listen, I'll go ahead, John.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, guys, I know we're gonna touch on this a little later in the episode, and we'll discuss it later. But I know we're talking about Bama and Ole Miss and these other 3-loss SEC teams. I think the best 3-loss SEC team is gonna be South Carolina. Like, I think they should, if they win, they should be in. I think that's by far the most interesting team heading into this postseason, because they have the defensive line to give anybody problems. So I'm just saying, like, if I know they're setting up to bring in another SEC team, I wouldn't hate it. Like, if you brought in a 3-loss SEC over Miami, I wouldn't mind, as long as it's South Carolina. Like, I would be cool with that.
I'm with you. I'm very much with you, especially with the development of LaNorris Sellers over the past few weeks as well. I mean, the kid's gone from just something that could just run to he's now an air threat, a really scary air threat. Like, that South Carolina team is becoming a very, very complete ball club right now. And going into a playoff, they're a dark horse to win it if they make it.
Yeah. So I'm going to quick fire one question here, and then we'll kind of dig into 2 more on the bracket and move on. Quick fire real quick is it safe to say that the Big Ten is just superior than the SEC this year, or has the SEC destroyed itself with the competition? Not destroyed itself, but it's just they've eat each other alive pretty much. You see what I'm saying? In competition. I would say the Big Ten is the superior conference this year.
I would say, yeah, like, from the top, yes, like, that's not even a debate. Like, the two title favorites are Oregon and Ohio State, I believe. But I'll tell you this, like, whoever Penn State is playing in the first round, I can almost guarantee you I'm going to have significant money on the other team. Like, I'm Penn State is not going to win a playoff game. Indiana, like, they're a playoff team, but they are going to be a substantial underdog to whatever team they play in the first round. You put any of those SEC teams against Indiana, I don't care if it's on the road, they're going to be a pretty big favorite.
Yeah.
So at the top, of course, but again, let's not act like it's a massive gap. Like, the gap from Oregon and Ohio State to Texas and Georgia is not that much, guys. So
minuscule. Yeah.
If you're asking me conference for conference, which one is better, I'm still going to take the SEC. But in terms of if who I think is going to win the national championship, I would take the Big Ten because I think Oregon and Ohio State are, the two best teams right now. If that makes sense.
We got a question in the chat. It says, if South Carolina wins, are they in over a 2-loss Notre Dame if they lose to USC? And this goes into my next question here.
That's a good question.
Is Notre Dame in or out if they lose this weekend? I know that some people have said they're locked in regardless. I don't think so. I think if USC would handle business appropriately and it wasn't close, I would say Notre Dame would have the possibility of dropping out.
I mean, if it's not close, then yeah, we have no business being in the playoff. I mean, but that's all besides the point. I think regardless with that second loss, I like Tyler saying that we're locked in regardless with the way we've played. But I think with that second loss, they're going to look back at that Northern Illinois game a little more heavily yet again. We've gotten the public to forget about it for quite a bit, but if we take that second loss, it's going to come back glaringly, and especially if we get blown out by Southern Cal. I think we'd be out, and they'd find somebody else to put in potentially that 3-loss South Carolina.
Southern Cal is in my opinion, that would be a bad loss on your record.
Yeah, I heavily agree. I don't think it's going to be close, and we'll get into that in the pick'ems. But
yeah, we'll break that down. We'll break that game down here a little bit.
But in regards to the question asked, what do you guys think?
I think Notre Dame would be out.
I would put. Man, this is tough. This is a great question from the chat. I would probably leave Notre Dame in.
Gun to my head, I think they take Notre Dame, but I would rather see South Carolina, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But gun to my head, they're not leaving Notre Dame out the inaugural CFP.
Yeah, no.
And then
they're not, but they should if they do lose.
The last thing we'll go into here really quickly. I know this can be a little confusing. I know, Brian, you've kind of looked over a little bit. I've looked over a little bit. There's I think 6 teams still able to get into the Big 12 title game. Something like that.
Yeah, I think they officially said 9. Insane. Like if there's chaos,
I don't know all the scenarios here, but what do you guys think about the Big 12 as a whole? Who gets that spot in the playoffs? Who do you think is going to be in the title game? Who gets that spot?
I mean, I think it's going to be Arizona State, Iowa State at this point. I mean,
that's a pretty clear cut.
Yeah, I think the cream is going to rise to the top here in this scenario.
I think that's the most probable tiebreaker is Arizona State versus Iowa State. Jose, I think anything.
Arizona's a corpse, so Arizona State will get in. Yeah. I haven't dove into the scenarios yet, but I think Kansas State beats Iowa State this week. If Kansas State wins, are they in, or does that open up the door for Colorado or something? No, but I'm talking about the Big 12.
The Big 12 title game.
The rankings shouldn't play up. You know what I mean?
I've got. Yeah. Yeah. I think regardless of how down we were on them, Tyler, at the beginning of the year, I think Arizona State is the team to beat at this point. Yeah. We mentioned that last week while you were gone. I do think this is Arizona State's chance to get in. I think this is their conference to win, but it's going to be hectic, to say the least.
I hope there's chaos. I hope West Virginia plays for the title. It'd be funny.
Yeah. Now I kind of want to dive into some breaking news this week. Bryce Underwood flips from LSU to Michigan. I know that there was a lot of. there's a lot I want to kind of dive into here, but we'll keep it kind of somewhat short. I don't want to be here all night talking about Bryce Underwood. Um, Number one question I want to bring to you guys is, and I'm sure this played a part, but LSU's recent somewhat downfalls. Does that play a part in this, or is it simply just the money?
I think it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I mean, the money that we're hearing this kid got offered is
Mhm.
just extravagant. It's
For
hard
what
to
it's
turn that
worth,
down.
it's I did watch an interview today from Dave Portnoy. He kind of explained how it all happened today. Uh, I won't play the audio for it, but basically he said he met the Ellisons. Um, they called his wife's Thomas Ellison. His wife's a Michigan alum. She said she hates seeing the team like this year. He's a billionaire. They were like, we'll pay whatever. And Portnoy was like, okay, well, let's get Bryce Underwood in. There's rumors that Tom Brady was in on the call. I don't know if that's true. Regardless of what happened or not, it sounds like he got a Barstool NIL deal of $12 million. At what point what do we do to regulate this? Do we put a salary cap on on the teams, or what? How does this, like, what do you do?
Oh, first, let me just say Bryce Underwood didn't want to go to Michigan. I mean, the guy is from Michigan. He was committed to LSU. If it took you $12 million to convince you to stay home, you did not want to go to Michigan. You know what I mean? Like, you should just wake up and say, you know what? I'm the number one recruit in the country. Michigan just won a national championship. I'm going to Michigan. It shouldn't take you $12 million this far into your high school recruiting process for you to decide, okay, I'm going to go to Michigan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Second of all, I'm sure my answer is going to be a lot different than yours in regards to a salary cap and stuff like that. So maybe your answers will be more, you guys will have more insight, I guess, or something. But I don't really care. If a billionaire wants to, I can care less what a billionaire wants to spend their money on. If they want to drop 12 million on a high school kid, so be it. I mean, I've seen so many times, number one high school quarterbacks bust. They don't turn out to be good. So that's life changing. That's life changing money for a lot of these people. If they don't get to the NFL, at least they're able to support their families for a few generations now, just by being really good in high school. As long as obviously they play their money right. So I don't really care. I mean, if you want to drop, 12, 15, 20 million on a kid, as long as you have the donors that are willing to back that, as long as you have these boosters or these billionaire fan base or alumni that are willing to spend that money, go ahead. From a national perspective, I don't think it matters all that much. I'm looking at teams like Indiana that aren't traditional powers. They're still succeeding anyways. I think the whole notion of, like, just because teams or any team now can buy any player, that all of a sudden they're going to be good. Like, all the top teams are always going to be the best. Like, there's no longer going to be any parity. College football, there really isn't that much parity. Even before there was NIL, like, it's always been Ohio State, it's always been Georgia, it's always been Bama, it's always been LSU. That's just the way it is, and that's the way it's always going to be. So I think the notion of NIL is going to create a big gap between the teams that can and can't afford players. I think it's a little overblown. And given the trajectory of where college football is heading in the next few years, we're going to see a segue, or we're going to see a breakaway from the Big Ten and the SEC from the NCAA in total, I would assume. And they'll have their own set of rules to figure this out. So I think for us to sit back and enjoy it, I don't think it's going to lead to like some crazy college football Armageddon. If anything, it's just accelerating the process of the Big Ten and the SEC breaking away and creating their own league, in my opinion.
I agree that the Big Ten and the SEC is going to break away, and I think it's getting very clear and adamant when you look at the college football playoff as well. The superior teams are at the top. They're going to join forces to create the best product for college football. Um, but Tyler, do you want to add to that at all? The NIL situation and Bryce Underwood? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some sort of regulation. Yeah.
But 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 who's gonna put that in place? Like the NCAA. The NCAA is shown to have no power whatsoever. Anything they put up there is gonna get shot down from a legal perspective.
Right.
So what
I'm not
exactly
sure exactly what Nick Saban was referring to, but earlier in the year on game day, he said that they have been working on some sort of regulation as a whole. I don't, yeah. Once it, because I know that they referred to it as the wild, wild west of football. Now it's just run 'em wild. And Nick Saban said, well, it's going to be regulated in the near future. I just, what is the regulation? You know what I mean?
I mean, it must not be that good of an idea. He retired anyways. If he heard the idea and said, "Oh yeah, it's gonna get a lot better," then I'll stick
Yeah.
around. I mean,
And
if he
look at
heard
the
that and he
call.
was like,
Look at
"Nah, this
the
must not be good," so I'm out.
look at the college basketball side of things. Tony Bennett leaves Virginia 2 weeks before the season because of the landscape of college sports now.
That's embarrassing, by the way. Tony Bennett. That's shame on you for doing that.
Yeah. Hmm. I'm transferring. Yeah. Hmm.
Now, I have a question for y'all, like in relation to this Bryce Young or Bryce Underwood, Bryce Underwood flip. Now with Brian Kelly having the rough year that he's having at LSU, like a lot of people have been saying this kind of was like the one thing kind of keeping him pinned to his job, like having the best class kid in the class. Now you lose him on top of having a really disappointing season, on the field. Do you think his job's in jeopardy from this, y'all? I think he
I
should be
think the
gone.
seat's hot. I think he's got one more year.
They're
Okay.
not gonna fire him this year.
Yeah.
But
Think they're
you at
paying too
one
much
point,
buyout money?
yeah, it'll be way too much of a buyout, And
Yeah.
although to be fair, I'll bring up a point right now, but just really quickly, at one point for LSU fans, they had the number one quarterback, Bryce Underwood, committed. They had the number one receiver, DeCarrion Moore, committed, and the number one running back, Harlem Berry, committed. And I don't have any of them coming. So yeah, Brian Kelly, his seat is very, very hot, but I want to say the buyout was like $70 million. They're not
Oof.
going to pay that right now.
Right.
But I just want to point this out that, as far as the SEC as a whole, I don't envision too many jobs opening up. The only job that's going to open up maybe is Kentucky and Arkansas, maybe. So if no SEC job opens up and LSU decides to pull the plug, they're going to be able to pick and choose any head coach they want because
Yeah.
they're going to be the prime head coaching position that every up and coming coach or any established coach really wants to go to. So
Right.
if they find someone, like let's say, a few years ago, Lincoln Riley, when he went to USC, no one expected him to leave. If they find an established coach at a different program who, is a proven winner and they decide, hey, you know what, you want to come to LSU, and he says yes, then yeah, they should probably pull that plug and just move on.
One last topic before we get into games here. I want to talk about some awards. Back in 2015, a man won the Heisman. He played 13 games, had 339 carries, totaled 1,900 yards rushing, 23 touchdowns, 5.9 yards a carry, and 152 yards a game. Won the Heisman. It was close, but he won the Heisman fairly convincingly. Uh, this year we have a kid that has played 11 games with 275 carries, 2,062 yards, 27 rushing touchdowns, 7.5 yards a carry, 187 yards a game, and he's plus 800 to win the Heisman. It just it doesn't make sense to me, guys. He leads every rushing category. So my question to you now is: has the Heisman competition become more of a popularity contest more than the best player in football, or what? What do you guys? What is your take on this? I get that Travis Hunter plays on both sides of the ball, but he doesn't lead every he's not even close to leading every statistic in receiving or defending. He didn't even get he's not even a finalist for the Jim Thorpe.
Mm-mm. Like if you look at their stats side by side in terms of like how they stack against the rest of the nation, I mean, I think the worst Genty ranks is like 4th in any specific
Ashton
category.
Genty is single-handedly not. I don't want to say single-handedly. It is a team sport and team game, but he is carrying this team to the playoffs
Yeah.
on his back. He is. So how is he
Um,
not the best player in football?
I don't have a strong opinion on this, guys. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say and pretend like I care for the Heisman. Who wins the Heisman? I don't.
Yeah.
But like I understand every argument you guys are making. You ask me right now who I'm casting my ballot for. I'd probably give it to Travis Hunter. I do think he's like, I think the ability to play both ways at a pretty high level, to me, like means something. Statistics aren't everything.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we have advanced analytics for. You know, when we handicap games, I'm not just looking at who's the highest, who's thrown for the most yards.
Mhm.
You know, who's rushed for the most yards. We don't do that. You know, we take a look at these advanced statistics and we take a look and see how much of an impact these guys making on the field. Um, aside from that, from putting up stats, like it or not, he's a massive impact on that field when he plays defense or offense. Now, as far as Ashton Genty goes, yeah, if you gave him the Heisman, I would have no problem with that either. Like, he is the best running back I think I've seen in college football since Adrian Peterson, maybe. Like, who else? He's been fantastic. Yeah, Boise State would not be in the national championship or in the CFP race if they had, I don't know, Rocket Sanders at running back. You know, like Ashton Genty is that much better than every other running back in the country, and he's able to produce that into wins. So I assume in the argument, I mean, obviously the statistics are massive for Genty, but to me the argument of well, he's leading his team to like 10 wins or whatever at CFP, like Travis Hunter was too. Like Colorado was legit CFP threat up until last week when they lost, and his team is also doing much better than we anticipated. You know, for what it's worth, like we all expected Boise State to be in this position. No one thought Colorado would be in the position they were this season, and Travis Hunter has a lot to do with that. But I don't care either way. It's not big to me.
Yeah, for sure. I get that. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, it's always been that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I for sure. On both sides of the ball, he's top 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
The idea the idea though, and I'm not disagreeing with you, Tyler, because I agree. But like I'm sure there was some in people's mind. It's like, well, Genty plays in the Mountain West, you know, so how would he really do? I mean, he turned up against Oregon, and Oregon's
I was
number one
about
in the
to say,
country,
I'm
and they
wondering
should have
what
won
his-
that game. Like Boise
Yeah.
should have won that game. So
Yeah.
you know, so I mean, I'm not. Over the course of a whole season, you got to play against a Big Ten schedule. I'm sure Genty would have put these numbers up, but the fact that he had that great performance against Oregon will help his Heisman odds. People can point to that and say, look, he did it against that team. So yeah.
All right, fellas. We're going to get into some ball games here for the weekend. We got some big games coming up, some playoff implications, and we're going to start off with a good old-fashioned debate of Notre Dame and USC. Jose and Brian's going to talk some Notre Dame USC for us. That line right now is Notre Dame minus 7.5 over on DraftKings, over under a 51.5. We'll let one of you all start it off. Me and Tyler will kind of listen and we'll join in at the end. Give your case for what you think is going to happen.
Brian, would you like to go first? I'll give you the option.
Yeah, I'll take lead on this one. Look, going into this, I mean, we're on a 9-game winning streak. We've been outscoring opponents by about good 31, 32 points per game during this 9-game winning streak. Games haven't even been close. The offense has figured it out. The defense throughout a number of injuries, including a new one this week, have proven they have the depth to do it. And my analysis is I just don't think USC has enough consistency on either side of the ball. They've proven to be very, very good on either side of the ball, and sometimes both sides of the ball in any given game, but they haven't been able to do it in back-to-back weeks. They showed a really good defensive approach last week, playing against a much better UCLA team than I think any of us thought that they were actually going to be this year.
That's true. Yes.
And they only allowed 13 points, and it's a big rivalry game, regardless of whether either of those fans really care about football at this point of the year. But it's a big game for them, and they showed out. But I just don't think they're going to be able to do it in back-to-back weeks. USC has suffered a bunch of injuries on that defense, and I think with Notre Dame's just thunder, lightning, and then whenever Riley Leonard wants to hit it, approach with the running game, the emergence of Jaden Harrison in the passing game, I think there's just too many weapons on both sides of the ball for USC to handle. I think it's a 14-point game, all said and done. I think the Irish win 31-17. I think it's a good game. I think it's an interesting game, but I don't think USC's cohesion is there yet at this point in their current form to fight against an Irish team. Jose, what do you think about your Southern Cal squad here?
I see you
first.
smiling.
Let me ask this first. Is this the biggest game in Marcus Freeman's era? Like, all things considered?
Yeah, given the implications, yes. I think absolutely so.
If Notre Dame wins, they're in. That's not even a debate, right? They're in the playoff if they win.
Yeah, I think so, for sure.
Okay. That has no correlation to what I'm saying. I was just curious to what you thought about how the magnitude of this game. Look, I'm taking my Trojans, 7.5 points. I think we're also live to win this game, guys. And let me break it down for you guys with a few different points, because I broke this game down extensively last night. I'm going to try and take some bias out of it. I'll be at this game. I will be wearing my USC gear very proudly. And I'm actually thankful to my sister. She's a Notre Dame grad. She was able to receive tickets from the school to go to this game. And I told her, thanks for bringing me, but I am not wearing any Notre Dame gear this game. I'm wearing USC. Listen, the Irish, fantastic season. They rebounded amazingly from that loss to NIU. I think we all thought they were cooked on their season just after that game ended, right? We assumed it was over. We thought there was no way, right? They lost some guys along the way. Benjamin Morrison, probably the biggest contributor. He's a fantastic player, probably a first-round pick when he decides to go to the NFL draft. And they're still playing really, really well, right? They've won, you think you said 9 in a row, Brian?
Yeah, 9 in a row at this point.
And I'm not trying to discredit some of their opponents, but who have they really beat, guys? Like, who is the most talented team that Notre Dame has beaten? I'm talking about pure talent.
Maybe Louisville, maybe Georgia Tech outside of the A&M game.
Yeah, like outside of the A&M, like once they got on this win streak.
Yeah, maybe Louisville, maybe Georgia Tech.
And Georgia Tech was without Haynes King, by the way. That was not like your normal Georgia Tech team. Okay, Louisville is by far the best team they played, and that was a game that was close. In fact, Notre Dame won it by 7 at Notre Dame. And the spread here is 7.5. But that was by far the best team Notre Dame has played. Also want to point out, can you guys tell me how many true road games Notre Dame has played since their season opener against A&M?
They played against Purdue
The
at
mighty
Purdue.
Purdue Boilermakers.
Yeah, the spoiler
That
makers.
raucous environment.
Yeah. um, fuck. We played at MetLife against Navy. We played at Yankee Stadium against Army. I mean,
The answer
fuck.
is
Is that
one.
is that the
The
only
answer is
game?
one. They played one true road game since A&M. Okay, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I'm nearly positive no other team in the country has had that kind of schedule where they avoid every road game. The only one they have to play is against the worst team in Power 5, Power 4.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I understand USC just came off of a very, very emotional win over their crosstown rivals, their biggest rivals, UCLA. At least on paper, that's their biggest rivals. I think a lot of people expect for them to sit down after that game, kind of just be like, whatever. And for any other opponent, that would be true. But this is Notre Dame USC, guys. I can guarantee you USC is going to get up for this game. I don't care what the record is. They will be ready to go. The fans will be there. It'll be a loud environment for Notre Dame. And again, it's something that's it's abnormal to them. They've played no road games. Okay. We talked about it a little earlier, Brian. Louisville was by far the best team they played from a passing offense perspective. That's including A&M, by the way. Louisville was the best. Tyler Shuck, although he didn't have an amazing game, he put up 264 yards and 3 TDs. And again, Louisville was in that game. It wasn't like it was a complete. Like that game came down to the final drive for Louisville. They fought hard in that game. So Louisville, nobody that Notre Dame has played has the talent on the board that USC has from a receiver perspective, from a skill position perspective, right? Benjamin Morrison's injury is key, but then again, they haven't played anybody to really test him since Benjamin Morrison went out, right? I know they beat Navy. I know they beat Army, and they blew them out. But let's not act like that was a coin flip game. Vegas had those spreads like at 20 points. They did what they were supposed to do. It wasn't like these games were like, oh, man, this is going to be such a good test for the Irish. If you're 20, double-digit favorites in any game, you shouldn't look at that game as a complete test. Like, oh, yeah, this is, we're going to find out what the Irish are made of. I'm sorry, Army's and Navy's offenses, although they've evolved a little bit, for the most part, they're still gimmicky, right? Like the reason Army and Navy are so successful on a year-to-year basis is because they run a different style of offense that most teams can't play. Most of the teams on their schedule aren't prepared to stop. But when you go up against these upper-tier teams, these Notre Dames, these Alabamas, they're going to shut that crap down because they just have the talent, the personnel on defense to stop it. They don't have to prepare for it. Their players are just simply better than yours. They're bigger, stronger, faster, So I'm not going to sit here and give a whole bunch of credit to Notre Dame for smacking Army around or smacking Navy around. They did what they were supposed to do. This is going to be the most talented team that Notre Dame has played, honestly, since week one. If you're talking about just on offense, this is the most talented team they're going to play the entire season until they get to the playoff, No one has been equipped to take out this Notre Dame secondary since Morrison went down like USC will be equipped. They have legitimate 5-star talent at that wide receiver position up and down the board. I'm getting 7.5 points here at home. Again, Notre Dame hasn't traveled at all this season. I'm going to take USC, rivalry game. They're going to get up. I like this bet a lot. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I will be on this one for a good amount of money. I will be at this game, like I said. Maybe my bias is getting into it. Notre Dame's still a great team. They've had a great season. I'm not saying they're a bad team. I just think this USC team is due for a little positive regression, guys. Keep in mind, they played Penn State at home. They should have beat Penn State. They lost in overtime. USC hasn't lost a game this entire season by more than double digits. Every single game they've lost has been usually within 7 or less. I think they lost 1 by 9. But other than that, every single game they've lost has been within this number. USC doesn't get blown out. They're not going to, that's just the way it is. But, maybe my bias is showing a little bit, but I'll be taking USC in this one.
That's really good analysis. It actually got me nervous about my team right now.
Tyler, you got anything to add to that?
Here's my last point on my Irish. Marcus Freeman has very much been reminding his team about this Northern Illinois game ever since that loss. Like every practice, every week, he is showing them film and reminding them how painful, how embarrassing, how that shit should never, ever, ever, ever happen again. And the amount of motivation that this squad has gotten from that is something I have never seen from a Notre Dame team, honestly, in my entire life. I think they're really bought in, and I think just like SC is going to get up for this game, and I think Notre Dame's going to be just as up for it in the sense that, yeah, USC's record doesn't show it, but this is the most talented team in terms of matchup games. Like this USC team can match us at every position. So I think Freeman's going to be on these boys all week, and they're going to show up hot and ready to go for this one. They do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a great game to watch. I personally don't lean either way this game, but I will be tuned in. And like y'all said, if Notre Dame wins, they're in. Uh, so they know what they need to do. We're going to move on now to a game that I will have some money on. We'll kind of go into this. Probably one of the biggest games of the weekend. South Carolina and Clemson. This should be a really, really good game. We got over at DraftKings, Clemson minus 2.5, over under a 49. Um, I love South Carolina in this spot. They're firing on all cylinders. I could be buying them high at this point, right? Um, but I do think that South Carolina's defense is that good. And when you look back at the beginning of the year, that when Clemson played a good defense against Georgia, they got completely shut down and shut out. And there is a chance that this could happen again. I do think there's still questions on the offensive side of the ball for Clemson. I think you'll see Cade Klubnik playing somewhere else next year, to be honest with you. Um, but yeah, I love South Carolina's defense here. I think they're going to cause Clemson trouble. I'll be on South Carolina money line at plus 110. Um, who wants to take it first on this one? Go ahead, Jose or Brian. Either one.
I'll take it from here. I mean, honestly, I hate to follow and not be able to give us a debate on this one, but I'm really live on South Carolina as well. I think they're very live to win this one. I think their body of work is just that much better than Clemson's. I mean, they've played 5 ranked teams this year. They're 2-3 in those games, but and most of them they have looked very good. Their defense has been very nasty. They've been a very tough team to play, and I just don't like Tyler said, anytime they've played any sort of defense that that's worth a shit, they implode. They can't score. They can't move the ball. They can't throw. They can't run. They can't do anything well. And with this South Carolina defensive front, I mean, I'm not seeing any reason why it's going to be any different. I mean, I have it a close, low scoring game, but I have South Carolina winning this outright. I don't see any reason that South Carolina loses this outside of self-inflicted injuries. Jose?
So everyone's on South Carolina,
Yeah.
huh? Nope. No, I am too. South Carolina's gonna win this game. Yeah, I'm surprised this line's 2.5. To be honest with you guys, I think whatever it is, you should jump on it now because by the game time, this thing might creep down.
I thought it would have been reversed. I thought South Carolina.
I had South Carolina as a favorite. I had South Carolina -1. I'm surprised they're underdogs in this spot. I don't see what Clemson has shown, other than the fact this game's in Clemson. I guess Death Valley, the other Death Valley. You know that's the only reason why. But this is great for college football. I mean, I wasn't the biggest advocate for the 12-team CFP, but this game actually has like national relevance at this point, and it always does. It's a big rivalry game, but this is the biggest game in this rivalry in years. Like, both these teams are really good, and I'm not saying it's not a play-in game, but it's absolutely a play-out game. You lose this game, you're not making it. You win it, you gave yourself an opportunity. South Carolina, though, man, that game they lost against LSU like week 3 or week 4 when they were robbed by the referees. I mean, if they would have won that game, this team would have been a lock to make the CFP at this point.
Or that game that they choked against Alabama not that many weeks later when they lose by 2.
This is a good team. This is a really good team.
Yeah.
So, this is a really good team. I've been impressed with them every week. Clemson, I have not been. I'm sorry. They keep winning games. I feel like it's in spite of themselves. It's not because they're actually going out there and dominating their opponents. You know, it's whatever. I'm actually kind of shocked. This line is South Carolina +2.5. I think South Carolina is very, very, very live to win this game. I actually have them favored. So, I agree. Make it 4 for 4 in this one. Give me the Gamecocks. I didn't expect this from Lenore Sellers. I mean, he actually looks really good back there. The system fits him really well.
The progression of Lenore Sellers needs to be studied.
Just like over the last 3 weeks alone.
Shane Beamer has saved his job maybe for multiple years, to be honest with you. Maybe for multiple years. Yeah. I mean, it's just incredible what this team has done, especially on the defensive side of the ball. This is an elite defense.
Dylan Stewart, stud.
No question for you about that. Do you think if he's extended it, is it through the life of Lenore Sellers being at South Carolina now?
I would say it's very much hinged on that. As long as he's able to keep Lenore Sellers there, he should be able. He'll be there as long as he's there.
They're going to have to pay some people in the offseason.
Yeah.
To keep
as they should. I mean, they have legit. Like if they're able to keep that defensive line and tag Dylan Stewart, especially, this team has legitimate chances next year to make the CFP. Like they're that good. Yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying if he doesn't leave, like if he doesn't transfer. Yeah,
they're going to have to pay some people. But now we'll move over to Michigan and Ohio State playing. Ohio State over at DraftKings is -20.5, over under a 43. Just a couple quick takes off there out there real quick. I think Michigan's moved on from this season. They're trying to flip recruits. They've got Bryce. They're looking at getting more. They're looking at next year now. My one question here is, I know this is a rival game, big matchup. So be it. Do you see Ohio State sit guys in the second half if they go up big?
Yeah, but I mean, they could. I don't think it would matter. Like, I think their backups are still good enough to handle Michigan.
But anyways, I'll let you start with this one, Jose. Michigan and Ohio State, 20.5 point spread, over under a 43.
I mean, is it too many points in this rivalry game? Absolutely. Like, Michigan should never be getting 20.5 points in this kind of game. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, they shouldn't. But that doesn't mean I'm going to bet on them. I can't put any money behind this Michigan team. Ohio State, Ryan Day, I mean, they understand what happened these last few years when these teams have played. They know that Michigan is the reigning national championships. Ryan Day understands that his job is always under scrutiny. He's going to use this position, this game right here, to show all of his fan base, all the alumni, that he is the man for the job. I expect him to try and run this score up, even if Michigan is able to keep it close. Ohio State will not be benching their starters. They will be playing these guys to the end because they want to win this game by 50. You know, they didn't want to win this game by whatever 20, whatever. They want to beat the crap out of Michigan. How does Michigan compete in this game? I guess they have to utilize their defensive line and lean on that. I mean, defensive lines have been able to give Ohio State some trouble in the past, and now they're down their starting center, Seth McLaughlin, and their starting left tackle. You know, Penn State was able to neutralize what Ohio State wanted to do on the offense just based on the defensive line, their prowess. Same thing with Nebraska. I mean, Nebraska honestly could have won that game against Ohio State. And they were utilizing the defensive line, just ate it up. So if Michigan's defensive line, they have about 3 first-round picks on the D line. If they're able to, you know, manufacture some pressure, some havoc back there, absolutely Michigan can hang around. I've seen other teams do it. And just given the state of Ohio State's offensive line, it wouldn't shock me if Michigan kept this close for a while. But I do eventually think at some point Ohio State's going to pull away. I have no play on this game. For the first time in I don't know how long, I'm not even going to watch this game. There's other games on the channel that I'm more interested in watching. But if Michigan keeps it close, then who knows, I guess. But yeah, I think Ohio State covers this one pretty easily, guys. Kind of reminds me of that Ohio State-Iowa game a few weeks, like a month or two ago. Like a scary remnants of that, where everyone was on Iowa, too many points, and then Ohio State just beat the crap out of them.
Anyone else?
I really don't have much to say about this game. I don't think it's going to be close. I think Ohio State's got too much aggression to take out on them for the last few years of the series. Yeah, Michigan's got talent on that D line, but I just think Ohio State's just they're too angry. They're gonna empty the bag on this game. I think 31-7 is probably going to be a good final score on this one. Michigan will put a good drive together, kind of similar to Indiana, and then Ohio State's just going to overwhelm them with pressure and take them out of this game offensively. Not much to say after that. I don't have an official bet because, of course, it's a rivalry game. Anything can happen. But if I were to have a gun in my head, I'm taking Ohio State all the way here.
I wonder what Michigan's team total is. It's got to be like 7.5.
Probably
their team total. It's got to be like 7.
9.5 maybe.
It's 43. It's over. Yeah.
I mean, in theory, if you're getting nearly 3 touchdowns on a spread where the over/under is 43, you should be betting the underdog. You know, that's just how bad Michigan's offense is.
I just don't trust it. I mean, they played basically an even game with Indiana a couple weeks ago, and it just, they still lost that game, and Indiana still only, they got their 7 and then a garbage time score. So, I mean, I don't see much of a different result from that.
Yeah. Did you see it by chance, Tyler? Michigan's team total is 21.
No, the spread. No way. That would be the bet of the century on the under.
It's
like
it's 10 and a half, 9.5, 10 and a half.
Yeah, fair enough.
Some have 9.5, some have 10 and a half.
Yeah, I figured 9.5 or so. Right.
All right, moving on. I'm going to let you kind of kick this next one off, Tyler. We're going to talk about Miami playing Tyler's Syracuse Orange. Over at DraftKings, Miami is minus 10.5 on the spread. Over under of 67.5 points expected to be scored this game. The question is, does Syracuse have enough firepower to pull an upset off? Does Syracuse have enough firepower to stay in this game and cover the 10.5? Tyler, what do you think? Anyone got anything they want to add to that?
Yeah, I actually want to follow Tyler. I'm completely backing what he's saying with the Orange here. I had a pretty thorough write-up where I think the Orange are very live to win this game myself, and it goes back to a point I made earlier when we were analyzing the CFP bracket, where I said over the last 7 games, Miami has allowed 28 or more points 5 times in those games. They've given up. They've shown they can give up a lot through the air, and they've also shown that if you've got a decent weapon on the ground and you are dedicated enough to use that weapon, you can cash Miami. And they have LaQuint Allen back there, and he's able to be utilized in the air and on the ground. He's got 800 on the ground and over 400 through the air. Kyle McCord, as much as people want to give him crap for how he played at Ohio State, he put up good numbers there, and he hasn't regressed outside of that really bad game against Pittsburgh with the 5 interceptions. His stats are almost identical through 11 games as what he put up at Ohio State last year. Maybe even better. I think he has more passing yards. So, like Tyler said, they like to throw the rock around, and I think they can exploit Miami's porous defense. If McCord doesn't throw 3 pick sixes on Saturday like he did against Pittsburgh, yeah, I think they're extraordinarily live to win this outright. And I think it honestly could get bad for Miami. I find they could be in a situation where it was against Georgia Tech, where they find themselves pressing because they're just getting out physical. And I think that could very much be the case. I think Kyle McCord's got still a chip on his shoulder from last year and the disrespect he got as a Buckeye. And he wants to show himself in a big game against a big team, a big brand. And I think he does it. I have this one going 35-31 Syracuse Orange win.
Wow. I'm happy you guys took Syracuse. I really am. Tyler, you especially, because I know you were kind of riding that bandwagon, driving the bandwagon earlier in the off season. You were all over Syracuse. Kind of put all of us onto them. Um, I have no play on this game, to be honest with you guys. I think it should be a fun one of the higher point totals I've seen this season. Hopefully, it lives up to that billing. But I selfishly I want Miami to win because I really want to bet SMU against them in the conference championship game. But if Syracuse wins, then it is what it is. But no play for me.
I have no play either on this game. I actually lean Miami slightly here, just because the thing that really seems to give Cam Ward problems is really, really good defenses, and I just don't think Syracuse boasts that, especially looking at this total of 67.5. Um, I think Miami could run this up, but I don't have a play on this. And next, we got 2 more games here we're going to cover. 2 really, really good games. Um, Auburn and Alabama. B Magic, we know.
War Eagle, baby.
Yeah, you're riding the high. So the over at DraftKings, we got Alabama minus 11.5, over under a 52.5. Alabama, are they still playing to get in? Is their season over? Do they care? Auburn, is this a letdown week for them? What do you think, Brian?
All right, if I'm going to take the lead on this, I have a pretty thorough write up on this one, and I may be a bit of a homer as well, but I may have some things to back it up. Look, that game over A&M was fantastic. It's a great pickup win. It gives the fans something to like hold them over until we get to next year. Like maybe buy Hugh Freeze a little bit more time, but I think there's a little bit more to that. If you look at Peyton Thorne's numbers this year, we've been throwing a lot of shade, myself especially, saying he is not a very good quarterback. Dude's sitting at, I think, 22 touchdowns and I think 8 interceptions on the year now. He's not having a horrible campaign, and you're starting to see these true freshman wide receivers emerge and make these absolutely wild plays. They're starting to look good. Granted, one of those games was against Louisiana Monroe, and they're not, a perennial juggernaut by any stretch, but, we've been struggling against a lot of these teams lately. Going into this game, Bama, however, is facing some adversity. They lost one of their star defensive players, I believe, for the season this last week in Deontay Lawson, and that's a big loss for them in their linebacking core. Um, they have just not been playing cohesive ball on that side consistently this year. Like they had those 2 great games leading up to Oklahoma, and then they just absolutely laid an egg. The offense just went away completely. Auburn has a good defense. That's not really been the issue this year. It's been the turnovers. And as far as I've been watching, Auburn's kind of cut down on the turnovers recently. They're playing more cohesive football. Jarquez has been starting to go off. I mean, look back at that Kentucky game where he had 287 freaking rushing yards. Like the team's starting to play a good brand of ball. Obviously, it's too little too late for the season really to matter. But what a better way to send off your season by making yourself eligible for the Birmingham Bowl and knocking off your rival and preventing them from making the postseason. I mean, it's a two-piece whammy. Like, my boys are going to get up for this game. It's Alabama. Yeah, I don't care how bad of a season we are having. If we're 0-11, we're getting up for that game. But I think there actually is something to play for us. I think Alabama's licking their wounds a little bit after losing to a very bad Oklahoma team. Bad Oklahoma offense, should I say. It's a very good Oklahoma defense. But they're licking their wounds. They've lost one of their star defensive players. And I think it comes back to bite them. There's another stat I want to give you guys. Alabama has never won in Tuscaloosa without Nick Saban in the history of this rivalry game.
Wow.
They only started playing home and homes, I want to say late 80s, early 90s, but statistically, they have never won in T-Town without Nick Saban. And I think the board is going to be in for a rude awakening with this ball game and seeing how this Auburn team, albeit not a great Auburn team, comes out and plays this game. I think Auburn's live to win this one outright. At the very least, they will cover. But if they win, it's because Milroe makes a couple mistakes. Peyton Thorne does not. I have Auburn winning 28-24 this week if those circumstances hold.
Jose?
Look, I agree. I think Auburn covers the spread. I think a lot of people expect Alabama to just come back and be pissed off and just cover the spread and beat the crap out of lowly Auburn. Auburn's really not that bad, guys. Their defense is really, really good, very underrated. And that's kind of what, we've seen Alabama this entire season struggle against good defenses. Their best win was against Georgia, but that was only, they beat the crap out of Georgia in that first quarter. After that, it was all Georgia the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from that one Ryan Williams touchdown, if you have a good defense, you're going to give Alabama some problems, enough to probably knock them off. Auburn has that, right? And I understand that you're going to say, well, Auburn doesn't have a great offense to keep up with Alabama. So how much could their defense really hold them? Well, neither does Oklahoma. Oklahoma's offense is also horrible, and they just held them to 3. The defense did more than enough. They did everything they could. So I kind of relate it back to that game. You're getting 11.5 points here in a pretty a pretty hyped up rivalry game. Like Brian said, Auburn's going to come up for this game. They're going to show up for this game, and they kind of have to because their season is on the line. Like if they win this game, they will make a bowl, which would be great given where the season was a few weeks ago or a month ago. So yeah, they will be ready for this game. I just think I'm surprised this spread's at 11.5. To be honest with you, I think Auburn's defense is severely underrated. I think it should be a little closer. Jalen Milroe is not that good of a quarterback. He struggles against really good defenses. Kalen DeBoer, for as good as he is, can't cover up. He can't mask the problems that Jalen Milroe possesses. I like Auburn here, guys.
I think Eugene Asante is going to give Milroe fits.
Yeah, we need to have a serious conversation where people just realize that Jalen Milroe is not that good. I'm still seeing mock drafts where this guy is like a first-round pick. I don't even see how.
No.
Yeah, I've seen them. Like, they're still out there where he's still consistently going in the first round.
Is it just because of his athletic ability? Because the throwing ability is just not there unless he's throwing 30 yards downfield. But you're not doing that every play in the NFL, so I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't know, guys. But that's fine with me. I'm gonna keep fading him. I took Oklahoma last week. I'm gonna take Auburn here.
I like Auburn here as well with the plus 11.5. Milroe's shown me nothing. There was a question posted on Twitter the other day that says, should Milroe return for another season, one more season with Alabama? If I was Alabama, I wouldn't want him to come back.
Yeah, I don't want him back. He's not. If he comes back, he's not playing in Alabama.
He's not going to play at Alabama. This is like a DJU scenario, in my opinion.
It's gonna be a Quinn.
Feels very.
It's gonna be a Quinn Ewer scenario.
Yeah. Tyler, you got anything to add to that game? Okay. And we'll move on to our last game on the slate here, a big one that has big implications. A&M holds the fate in their hands. Over at DraftKings, we got Texas minus 5.5, over under a 48.5, going to A&M. I'll let whoever wants to start this one off here. A&M, they control their own destiny. They can get into the SEC title game, still make it in the playoffs, even with 3 losses. Can they get by Texas this week?
I'm really excited for this game, guys. I really am. This should be one of the best games of the season if everything holds true. Now, listen, I'll take the lead on this one, guys, unless anybody has anything substantial they want to say, because I have quite a bit to talk about on this one.
No,
Go
go
ahead.
for it.
Listen, we have been clamoring for Marcel Reed to be the starting quarterback for this football team since week 1, maybe against Notre Dame, right? I know Tyler and John, we've discussed this on this podcast, that Marcel Reed fits this offense to a T. He can run, he can throw a little bit, and Colin Klein, historically, these offenses are predicated on the quarterback being able to move around, which is why Weigman was not the guy for the offense. He has a substantial injury history, and he just didn't mesh well with what they were trying to do, the personnel they were trying to put out there. Marcel Reed comes in. Offense looks really good. Starting to run down a little bit, though. Why is that? They cannot run the ball. Their top 2 running backs, Le'Veon Moss and Ruben Owens, are out for the season, right? So Marcel Reed is forced to throw the ball. They can't run it, right? And you're already not playing within the system that Colin Klein wants. He has to adjust given the circumstances. So in a weird way, like I said, we've been clamoring for Marcel Reed to start all season. You're probably better off just putting Connor Weigman back there. He's the better thrower. You can't run the ball anyways. Marcel Reed's not going to be the game changer. He's not going to be able to run the ball for 120 yards to keep the defense honest. It's just not the way it's going to work. He has to work off of the actual running back's run game. He's not going to be the lead running back in every single game. So if you can't run it, why not put Connor Weigman back there and let him throw it? He's the better passer. You know what I mean? I don't know. You guys, any thoughts on that? Like, do you disagree with what I'm saying there? I've been thinking about it, and here we are in a must-win game for A&M. Like, if you already can't run the ball, why not put the better pure passer back there and at least give your receivers, give your passing game a chance to really succeed? Marcel Reed's not a horrible passer, but he does miss quite a few throws throughout the game that really could change the trajectory of each game they play. Tyler, I know you and I were on the A&M ship this entire year. You agree with that assessment? Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, would you rather see Weigman in there right now, or are you comfortable with Marcel Reed? Right. Fair. Yeah, no, and that's the handicap in this game, and that's kind of why I want to back Texas this one. There's a lot of love coming into the market for A&M in this one. Home dogs, biggest game in Kyle Field history probably. I get it, but really, guys, I mean, A&M's best asset on their entire team is their defensive line, which really hasn't been all that good. Now you're going up against Texas, which maybe has the best offensive line in the country. I know there's a lot of love for LSU, Will Campbell, Emory Jones back there, but Kelvin Banks is the best left tackle in the country in Texas, and I don't see what A&M is going to produce in order to really to trouble this this offensive line. Quinn Ewers has not been playing at the level that I think we all expected him to play at. But what better opportunity than right now to show the world, to show the country really that you guys, they still are. He still is, and this team still is one of the most talented, one of the best teams in this country. The 5.5, it does seem kind of like a little bit, quite a bit, but I'm going to lay it with Texas, guys. I feel pretty comfortable with it. A&M's defense hasn't been that good. Now they're going to go up against a really good offensive line. We talked about how A&M can't run it. You're also not going to be able to throw it on this Texas secondary. They're one of the best in the country. They have 2 potential first-round picks in the secondary, Jediah Barron and Andrew McCuba. So I don't really know where this offense is going to come from A&M. The only reason I'm not hitting it harder is because it's at home, and I respect the Kyle Field home field advantage. But I think matchups-wise, guys, I think this should be Texas all the way. So yeah, giving the Longhorns, dropping that 5.5. I think they solidify their opportunity to get into the CFP. I think even if they lose this game, by the way, they should still be in the college football playoffs, just given all the chaos. But yeah, I think they go to the SEC championship themselves and win this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're in. Yeah. Do they? Well,
Hey Tyler, they can't hear you. There's something wrong with your mic. They can hear it. They can hear everyone but you. But
Yeah, it's brutal.
we'll keep it going here.
yeah. Well,
Well,
I'll just let me just answer the question that Tyler was asking, because he was pretty much posing the idea of will Texas pull their players out, given that they don't need to win this game. And my answer to that is no, because like if they win this game, they are for sure in the CFP. Like they will make the college football playoff. If they lose this game, they're still gonna make it, but it's not 100% guarantee. It's like a 98% chance they make the CFP, 99% chance CFP. You know, so if you're gonna have your starters go out there and play the first half, you might as well have them finish the game and get that absolute certainty you're gonna make the CFP, rather than just leave it up to chance. Although the chance is minuscule, why leave it up to that at all? When you are, if you can handle business, just punch your ticket.
Yeah, I really like Texas here. I think Texas kind of takes the question marks out of the scenarios of A&M possibly making it. Um, I lean Texas here. I don't think 5.5 is enough. I think Texas wins closer to 10 points. Brian, you got anything to add to
yeah,
that?
that kind of just took my score prediction right there. I had Texas winning this one by 10, but it really does kind of look at both their bodies of work again. Yeah, Texas doesn't have like that marquee win this year. I mean, you could argue their best win really what Vanderbilt still this year. Um, but like A&M, you look at some of their wins now. You look at that LSU win, and that really doesn't look as great now because LSU doesn't look nearly as good. And Missouri, I mean, I think we're all on the same page on Missouri. I think Missouri was pretty fraudulently ranked for a large portion of the season. But Texas has been a little bit more consistent. I think you bring up the point. A&M can't run the ball consistently right now. I think Texas has a really good defense. I think they want to just guarantee they're going to get this bye. I think a bye is really important for Texas right now in their path to win a national title. So I think they want to secure their spot in the SEC championship game. And I think they leave College Station 27-17 winners.
How lucky, by the way, is Texas that everybody lost last week? Because if there was no chaos last week, this game would probably be a play out game, because as Brian talked about, their best win probably is Vanderbilt. They've beaten absolutely nobody this season, guys. A joke of a schedule. So now they're pretty much guaranteed a spot just by default that everybody else lost. But this is not, if you're comparing resumes to other bubble teams, Texas would be towards the bottom of that list, in my opinion.
I don't know if people can hear me now. I don't know what happened, but
I saw a setting change in the thing, so you
okay.
should
Well,
be.
sorry for recording an entire episode. Nobody could hear what I was saying, but yeah, no, I want to take Texas A&M badly here. Just one, for the home field advantage. Two, because I have a ticket on A&M, and three, because of the lack of schedule that Texas has played, and maybe that does end up playing a factor. But
That's fair. That's fair.
with the way that both teams have looked to this point in time, aka how A&M has struggled to this point in time, I can't back them, unfortunately, in this game. So had to pick. I'll play Texas, but I haven't played anything officially.
All right, we're gonna move on here. That was our final game of the night. We're gonna get into our best bets and the Pilgrim Parlay of the week. I'll start off with my bets right now. I'll be on South Carolina money line at plus 110. Basketball bet for you. I didn't talk any basketball tonight. A lot of the better games are currently happening or have happened. You got the Maui going on. So you don't really know the matchups and what spread is going to be which. But regardless, I do have one bet. I'm not trying to be a homer here, but my projections and everything, there's a far superior team in the country right now, and it's showing. I will be on Gonzaga minus 14 tomorrow. I project it closer to 20. So that's 2 points possession for me. Or I'm sorry, two possessions of value for me. So I will be on Gonzaga minus 14 tomorrow. I think they win big. And then we'll get into the Pilgrim parlay of the week in just a second. Jose, what is your bets this week?
USC 7.5. I'll be in attendance in this game. I think this is a great spot for USC. Big rivalry game. I like the Trojans. Also, really like South Carolina. We all talked about it. We're all in agreement on that one. Give me South Carolina money line or +2, whichever you prefer. I also really, really like Kansas State getting 2.5 against Iowa State on the road. Massive implications there in the Big 12, so I'll take them. Also want to point out, and I know we've been riding this bandwagon for the last 3 weeks, but Kansas is a 1-point favorite on the road at Baylor. You cannot convince me that Kansas is not the best team right now in the Big 12. They are playing better football than anybody in that conference. I'm only laying 1 point on the road with Baylor, guys. Should we do it for old time's sakes? Should we just bet Kansas one last time for the season before it ends? I think we
might
should.
As well. Let it ride.
I think we should. Let's let it ride with
baby.
Kansas. Let's back the Jayhawks here. Jalen Daniels. Could be the last time we see him in a Kansas Jayhawks jersey. So we got to let it go. We got to let it ride.
Yep. I'm going to be taking South Carolina, USC, and now Kansas. I've actually already bet the 10.5 because it has come down a little bit with Syracuse. So I am going to take the Syracuse plus 10.5. But I'm also going to take Iowa playing Nebraska this weekend. Look, I know they did get, a pretty convincing win against Wisconsin last weekend, but that was also a Wisconsin team who just fired their offensive coordinator. Wisconsin's kind of down in the shitter. And Nebraska has really struggled. Dylan Raiola has thrown 8 interceptions in his past 6 games.
Jesus.
So he has really struggled turning the ball over. And, the one good thing about Iowa's team is their defense. So I do think that they're going to be able to kind of keep on that same trend. I'm getting 4 with Iowa. I'm going to take it. And I do think they win by a touchdown or more.
Brian, you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, I do. I got a few right here. I'm taking Georgia Tech to cover the 19.5 against Georgia this week. I think this is probably going to be one of the closer Georgia Tech games that we've probably seen in a while. This Georgia Tech defense is not bad, and when their offense puts it together, they're pretty good. If they can put some pressure on Carson Beck, this is a one or two score game at best, because he just can't handle pressure. I have Indiana covering their 29.5 against the Purdue Spoilermakers. In-state rivalry. I think I really think Indiana's pissed off about this loss against Ohio State, and they're trying to make a statement for the committee going into this playoff. Purdue's really not very good. My Irish beat them 66-7. And it's been a common theme for the Boilermakers all year. Like, I don't think they score more than 10. I think Indiana has an offensive explosion. They cover the 29.5. And I had talked about this in the Notre Dame USC game. I'm on the opposite side of Jose. I'm taking the 7.5 for Notre Dame in this one for the reasons I gave y'all before. I think the offense has figured it out, and the defense is just not going to miss a beat. I think they cover that very easily. But those are my 3 picks for the week.
All right, and then we will jump into yearly tradition of the Pilgrim Parlay of the week. You guys can kind of watch for that on Action, but I will go ahead and give you what we have here. Starting off with Jose. This is all games on Thanksgiving. Punishment is winner gets kicked out of the group chat for a day, 24 hours. But starting with Tulane minus 13.5 over at DraftKings playing Memphis. That is Jose's pick. Jose, you got anything you want to add into there?
Beauty pageant. And Tulane has to beat the crap out of Memphis here. If they do that, they will be the next team in if Boise State loses, right? If it's a close game, they probably still will be in. But if they absolutely demolish a really good Memphis team, like the spread indicates, they will be the next team in if Boise State were to fall, maybe in that Mountain West Championship game. So I'll give you Tulane minus 13.5.
Awesome. So we got Tulane minus 13.5. Our good friend Tobin, he's got the Detroit Lions minus 10. playing the Bears. And then we got Brian over here taking the Green Bay Packers -3.5 against the Dolphins. Brian, you got anything you want to add to that real quick?
0-7 in games under 40 degrees at kickoff is Tua Tagovailoa's record. It's going to be 26 at kickoff in Green Bay on Thursday. He's not going to do shit. They're going to get shut down. Green Bay is going to handle business in the frozen tundra, and they're going to cover the spread easy.
And we got my boy Big T over here taking Josh Jacobs anytime touchdown score. Tyler, any reasoning for that one?
No, look, they've been pounding the rock really well. They've been running the ball really well. There's also a line for a same game parlay out there for anytime touchdown and Green Bay to win for -100. So if you have any interest in taking that or adding that to it, you can. But no, they've been pounding the rock really well. Once they get inside the red zone, it's kind of Josh Jacobs' show. Once they kind of get inside the red zone, inside the 10-yard line, he's gonna get his touches, and I think he's gonna have opportunity to maybe break one because they've been getting some chunk plays on the ground. So I'm gonna be taking that.
And then lastly, there's not a line out for it yet, but I will be on Butler, regardless whether it's the spread or money line or whatever. Butler is playing Northwestern at a neutral site game. This is college basketball. Butler is a very underrated team, far superior than what Northwestern is going to bring. I really like Butler. I will be on them regardless of what their points are, as long as it's below 5, and it should be. My projections are right. It should be around that 2 mark, -2. So I'm taking that at -110, and that comes to 16-1 odds. So if you want to throw something on our little Pilgrim parlay, we got Tulane -13.5, Detroit Lions -10, Packers -3.5, Josh Jacobs anytime touchdown, and Butler money line or spread. It should be right around a pick 'em. And we will post that on our Action Network. You can follow that at the Boulevard Pod on Twitter. You can follow me and Jose for some college basketball bets. Jose 808, Jay Humphrey 25. Always doing college basketball bets. We're having a pretty good season over there. Hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving, great holiday week. Jose, have a great time at the game. We really appreciate you guys tuning in, listening. It's been a fun year. We still got college football playoffs. You guys are going to kind of see us transition here into maybe doing some live shows of college football bracket reveal, college football playoff picks, conference title. We'll be having an episode of conference championship games. You might see a little more college basketball coming from me with college football winding down. Me and Jose talking some college ball, college basketball, Tyler hosting for us, whatever. And then you'll see us transition and talk about some NFL playoffs when we get to that as well. And then we'll kind of go into all season, take some time off maybe and get ready for next year. And we'll go back to what we did last year, team breakdowns, recruiting, who's went where, transfer portals, all that good stuff. But we appreciate you guys listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. Y'all check our actions for all of our picks. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy it with your families. Enjoy watching some ball. Stuff your faces. We love y'all. We'll see you next week on Wednesday night. Peace out.
Happy holidays, everybody. Oh, my fucking back.
I just recorded a whole fucking